And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the Monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3 good brothers and sisters. Ha 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 ha! We have making her return, the queen of innuendos, and the lady of 1,000 fanfics. Good sister Mickey.
Hello.
Actually, I think this is her debut, Monk.
This is my debut.
Oh, yeah.
This is my first time here. I was unable to make it to the last one that I was scheduled for, so I am very excited to make it for the second episode.
Mm-hmm. And making her return, the biggest potato apologist in the monastery, and the one who is always the first to tank the floor. Good sister Spoiler.
Why am I the potato apologist?
You know your crimes.
For enjoying a good Lalafell now and again? Like,
Bully the
Tartars
potato.
are better.
oh, baby.
No thanks. I'm not Hannibal Lecter. Also, potatoes have too much starch.
Yeah, but they're so good, Monk. Especially with cheese and butter.
What, you saying I should boil them?
Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
I didn't even have to say anything. Look at that. My chaos reigns supreme.
And of course, last but certainly not least, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Too kind.
We are back once again with another reconstruction. This time covering the Haven arc for RWBY, i.e. volumes 4, 5, and 6, where RWBY went from, hey, we're a web series, into, hey, we're trying to be an anime, but we're totally not an anime. And I will continue making fun of the fact that certain people in the fan base want to be wishy-washy about being a fan base. About not being a fan base, being an anime.
The anime that's not an anime, or is an anime that is an anime?
Even though people have pointed animation scene similarities when it comes to certain Sakuga moments.
I mean, it's very clear that they're pulling inspiration from way too many shonen battle anime.
Which we have no problem with that. But if you're going to do that, at least be a little honest about the fact that you're taking that kind of inspiration.
In other words, don't bullshit a bullshitter. You won't get away with it.
Like, I contrast this with, say, Avatar. The creators were very outright open about the inspirations. Some of them being more direct than others. I do remember in the art book they did state that the Cabbage Merchant was their own little tribute to the 3 old guys in Cowboy Bebop that always show up.
Hey, if you're gonna steal from the best.
And of course, some of the there's a lot more in jokes in the original series that a lot of people missed. Just Julie being them taking a shot at the Nickelodeon representative who would always meet up with them. And that whole ridiculous armor thing with Aang that was loosely based on a lot of the toy pitches that were presented to them that they rejected.
Thank God they rejected them.
Yeah, it's just too bad about the series that happened after. But we have a reconstruction about the Legend of Korra for all y'all if you want to go watch them.
Now, this particular era is where things certainly changed. We had full on episode lengths, usually 22 to 24 minutes, and around 30 minutes for a book's finale. And this is where they moved over to, I believe they started using Maya as their animation software.
Yes. Because that's also where the dial shift started.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people yeeted out in part because of a lot of these changes, and in part because of changes we would see later. But this is being that this is where Miles Luna and Carrie Shawcross had to pick up the pieces after the untimely death of Monty Ohm. This is where their particular writing flaws that I've bitched about in the past and will continue to bitch about really start to make their appearance. It doesn't go full hog wild until later, but this is where things start to make their appearance. This is also where we start to see a downgrade of quality when it comes to character design. And I want to make clear that the art itself is perfectly fine. I am not slamming the artist. I'm more slamming what the artist was requested to do. If I have to use an analogy, Zan, think of it as akin to the Baron. Which, could you give the cliff notes on the Baron when it comes to BattleTech and why that's relevant for this?
Actually, I think you'd be better suited to giving that, Monk. I would probably have to go look up details I've long forgotten.
The Baron in BattleTech was a class of warship that was created to be a next generation warship for the then burgeoning Star League. This was just before the reunification wars, which whole other matter. The idea was they were going to try and make the bestest, most state of the art warship for the new Star League Defense Force.
Yeah.
This particular warship cost 1.8 billion C-bills.
Here it says 1.628, but yeah.
1.628. But the problem is there were a whole lot of what's known as teething troubles, and there were especially a lot of problems with the engine. It was having trouble on shakedown runs, largely because they were trying to do this ridiculously advanced tech for the time. And the thing is, it was designed exactly to specifications. But because of the changes that had to be made to make it actually, do its job, it wasn't able to be the type of warship it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a destroyer-class warship.
Mm-hmm.
Destroyers are supposed to be faster warships than the big carriers, and meant to either be escorts or hidden fades.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, it was too damn slow to do that job, even though it was designed exactly to what the customer wanted, but not to what the customer needed.
As anyone in retail can say, the customer is not always right.
No, and and with a lot of the really bad designs that have been made and have been requested to manufacture, they were done exactly as they were asked. It's just that what they're asked to do isn't what was actually needed, and where this comes into play when it comes to the art style shifts that we started to see is a gradual de-emphasis on primary color.
Mm-hmm.
As well as this need to add extra details. Now, some people this wasn't as much of an issue, but I'd say one of the big examples of this is look at the way Ruby Rose is designed in Volume 3 and then in Volume 4.
I have the artist's original.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, if you want me to link it.
Well, I'm not going to be able to show it on screen, but
That's fair.
just take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more black in that.
Yeah.
There's always been a lot of black, but adding in white and adding in these little details that are just unnecessary.
Well, they also completely changed her skirt to black when it was previously red.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but her name is Ruby Rose. Wouldn't you assume then she would be having primarily red? Why black?
I mean, I guess the argument that they wanted, I can see using red and black. I can see using black to accent the red.
Yeah, that's how it started out.
Mm-hmm.
Why shift completely away from it? That's something that I don't understand.
The problem that I had with it was adding in the white
and taking off the sleeves, and they cut away a bunch of the outfit,
Mm-hmm.
going from Veil to Mistral.
And to be a little fair, they did do something similar in Volume 2 when they had the one-day outfit, but that's
a one-off.
Yeah, it was a one-off. It's not.
That's like getting on say a shonen battle manga for having a somewhat different outfit for one episode.
Right.
I would say that the person who changes least from Veil to Mistral is Yang's outfit.
Mm-hmm.
They added a few more details, but it's still basically the same outfit.
It is basically the same, but the problem that I ended up having with the outfit change for Yang is the yellow isn't as prominent.
Yeah, it isn't as bright. That's true. They in fact changed the blouse under the jacket to more of an orange than a yellow.
There's that, and there's also a whole lot more brown to represent leather.
Yes. I would say that the most drastic change for this arc is Weiss, because it's not a white with some blue, with some like ice blue on it. It's this dingy blue-gray.
Right.
Like dirty slush.
Ooh.
It looks like dirty
attractive.
slush to me.
I mean, it kind of just gets back at the whole like overall problem with modern RWBY is, well, besides the foundational issues, is that like there was this original concept where each character was strongly associated with a color, and that was the point of their names, their concepts, their designs. And the longer the show goes on, the further away from that we get.
And I know some people say I'm finagling about details, but consider this. With a lot of outfits with superheroes, even with whether they be Western or Eastern, the focus is on simple details to the point where you can pick them out in a line. I can put up a display of red and blue, and people are going to think Superman based on how I present the colors.
If you would present them in a different pattern, they're immediately going to go Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Or in a different proportion to each other. Like if you have more red or blue.
Yeah.
And alternatively, I can give you that spiky orange and black explosion outline, and everybody's going to go, hey, Bakugo.
Mm-hmm. And when you're adding even some more detailed character designs. You still have those small sets of things that are going to make it distinct. To use a few examples when it comes to that, let's use the power armor designs for the Astartes in Warhammer 40,000.
Mm-hmm.
You do the shoulders, and you do the shoulders and the large feet, and especially the shoulderness of the design. Like if I drew an outline, you could immediately say Space Marine.
Pauldrons for the Astartes are exaggerated to the point of that's fucking huge.
Mm-hmm.
And even Guts has aspects of this.
It was too big, too rough. Yes, you couldn't properly be called a sword.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will recognize Guts from the Dragon Slayer alone.
Yeah, and the recognition goes even further once he acquired the Berserker Armor.
Ah, yes, the armor that stabs needles into your bones to hold them together to keep you fighting.
Mm-hmm. And one of the more iconic visuals is the Berserker Armor when the Beast of Darkness takes over.
As it gets the wolf, the helmet takes on that wolf outline. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the point that I'm getting at is that if you're going to be putting extra details in there, they shouldn't take away from the main drawing point.
They should enhance rather than clash. Yeah.
Yeah. There are plenty of on a Space Marine. There are plenty of extra details that there could be. The iron halo, prayer seals, little personalizations depending on what chapter they are. The color scheme.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still going to recognize it as a Space Marine. With a lot of the designs that would come later, it becomes an issue of would you be able to pick them out of a line?
Yeah.
And I'd say one of the big examples of this, oddly enough, is Oscar.
Oh my word!
Like Oscar's design could be any protagonist in any console RPG that I've played in the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing special about him.
I mean, I get it. He's supposed to be portraying a farm boy, but that's not.
But like, what color is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately, what?
What color?
Well, if you're going off of like the jacket that they've given him in recent seasons, it's green because Oscar Pine, that they may have been playing off of that. But originally, when it was just the white shirt and those stupid orange suspenders, there's no color. There's nothing that would set him apart as saying, "Oh, he's associated with this color."
Which also just like outright breaks their world building, because thought is that they're associated with a color.
I distinctly recall Montione putting out a document that was basically meant to be a guide for people who wanted to do their own spins.
I remember when I was making my shitty little RWBY fanfic that was something I consulted all of the time.
And in fact, let me check the folder that I have for the tabletop RWBY projects that I have, and yeah, I still have that document. I will eventually talk about some of the various takes that people have had with adapting RWBY to tabletop, but that's a story for another day. Now, for this week, we are tackling what we are calling the Haven arc because that's going to be the focus. This is volumes 4 through 6, and this is what you have the attempts to try and expand the world, but the expansion is a lot of bullet points before they move on to something else, or the explanation for things is done in the complete wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, this is where we start to see some of the problems that we have with Miles and Carrie's writing. And it's the canary in the coal mine, and that's why I don't blame anyone having yeeted out around this point.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, a lot of those problems we'll be able to avoid because we're not going with exactly what was done in canon, because by this point we've veered off, and we're just exploring the consequences of our veering offs.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all that said, let us have a go. But before we can even do that, I think we need to do a bit of catch up regarding the cliff notes of what we did in the first 3 volumes, because that is going to be important. And also, I have to shame Spoiler for trying to sneak in a Dragon Ball Z joke.
You cannot shame one who has none.
So
yes, we cannot shame the shameless. I know.
So Zan, would you mind being the evangelist and cover a bit of the cliff notes of what we covered in the first 3 volumes?
Sure, I can most definitely be the guy I always am, the fucking loudmouth. So, things that happened in volumes 1, 2, and 3. We introduced the teams that primarily volume 1 centered on just Team RWBY, their difficulties integrating and becoming an actual team. There were some hints and details to Team Juniper, such as our change to Jean being that he's not the bumbling fool you all want him to be, fuck off, but he is a genius of hard work, and because he faked his transcripts, he impressed Ozpin and was allowed to stay. But from there, we had a few of the different bullying tactics of Cardinal that didn't work out quite as well. Mainly because, well, Jean had already confessed himself to Ozpin and Goodwitch first. We also showed that there is an issue with the White Fang working with terrorists rather than it being why are Faunus working with humans, because in our world, Faunus and humans get along a lot better, simply because of the way we've changed everything. But the primary focus was always Team RWBY, how they're competent individually, but integrating as a team is the issue. And also, RWBY being completely annoyed by Yang trying to protect her sister.
You know, like a regular sibling would be. Indeed.
So, Volume 2, we actually introduced the city of Beacon as its own character. Kind of like it's seen as this big college town because, well, it does surround a hunter's academy. And it's also, we wanted to introduce this city as a character because the settings should not just be set pieces. They should not just be backdrop. Much like Metropolis is a character its own, along with Superman inside it, or Gotham is definitely a character its own, with Batman inside it. Beacon was a character its own, with the small day-to-day adventures of Team RWBY and Team Juniper, as well as their little D-level jobs from their practice licenses, essentially. But it also shows some growing concerns, such as Grim Migration getting way too close to the crowd and to the city, and also to the fact that Crow and Ozpin have a connection. It's shown much more clearly here. But there's also this growing tension having to do with the Vital Festival, because it's a big celebration, a big moment of what is essentially an accord between the nations trying to keep peace and harmony and show that they'll be able to back each other up.
Is this our version of the Olympics?
Yes, actually,
Yes, it is.
I mean, this sounds vaguely familiar. Are we sensing a theme here?
Yeah. Then, of course, Winter shows up. And, well, there's some tension between Winter and Crow there. But it's not for the same reasons. And then, of course, we explore how Blake interacts with the White Fang, how she's not on some sort of wanted list, but she was a hero worshiper of Adam, and then discovering his true nature, didn't want anything to do with them. And then, of course, Blake's parents are still the leaders of Monastery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, our Volume 3, the Vital Festival. Obviously, this is our tournament arc, and it's a proper tournament arc this time! You know, everybody's around. Even Ironwood is there, and he brings in his robots. And, of course, Crow is angry about that. We get more hints about Ozpin's circle. And not just the friendly, eccentric headmaster that he's been. And because some academies are coming in, they get into some guest dorms, which also allows Cinder to sneak in, with some tournament members disappearing, and people think it might have something to do with the White Fang, but it isn't really. It's actually Mercury murdering people, or at least trying to.
You know, like an assassin would.
Yeah, like a real assassin would.
You mean he actually succeeds at what he's supposed to do? What a concept!
Well, it's also so everything can stay in control of Cinder's hands.
Uh-huh.
Now, there are still some of the main story beats we follow. Communications being disabled, Grimm's coming in, etc. But Penny isn't really involved this time around. Pyrrha still talks to Oz about maidens, and is still going to be chosen as a maiden. But our change to the maidens, other than them being the guardians of the vaults and the relics, is one of the pieces of true magic that keep maidens safe so that people can't abuse them or otherwise manipulate them, is they become almost unnoticeable, hard to remember. Not exactly erased from the world, but the awareness of who they are becomes nearly impossible to keep track of without some strong emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
We still have the big fight in all of Beacon. You know, Pyrrha still gets thrown off the tower and she falls into a coma. Also, we do establish that the ship teasing is not teasing anymore. It's very clear how Jean feels. Torchwick doesn't die. We want to keep around this interesting villain.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, someone from the background pulls his leash, says, "Get the hell out of there."
Mm-hmm.
Thank God.
Adam shows up, is annoyed when Blake will not follow what he says, because our Adam is not a psycho-jealous ex-boyfriend. Our Adam is a cold-hearted, dyed-in-the-wool pragmatist who will do anything possible to advance the Faunus in the way he thinks they need to advance. Think Shar Aznable as he's dropping Axis! Yang still gets her arm cut off. Ruby still does her Silver Eyes thing. And then we get our little hints to go where people need to go. Because Crow's like, I've heard about a list of people with silver eyes and some of the legends behind them. And that's over in Mistral in Haven. Yang is suffering from severe PTSD as one losing their arm might. But this is not something she'll easily overcome, and it's not something that is just kind of pushed to the back. This is something that she'll need to sit and actually try and overcome. Blake, because of Adam showing up, is already very nervous about what's going on with that, why the White Fang would even be doing that with a terrorist, and is going to go back to Menagerie to find out what the hell is going on. Weiss gets called back to the Schnee Dust Company because it's proven that her brother is a fucking incompetent. So now the only competent daughter that isn't already involved in something else is going to be trained up to be the next head of Schnee Dust Company. Crow decides to go with, I guess we decided to call it Junior, even though it's technically Ranger once Ruby joins.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's a scene of Salem admonishing, but also congratulating Cinder, because Cinder did manage to steal the powers of Pyrrha, at least partially. But she also stole a little bit extra. There's a piece of Pyrrha's soul, at least we think, within Cinder, causing her to see and hear Pyrrha almost as a video and audio hallucination. And while Salem is both admonishing some of the failures while congratulating some of the successes, Cinder swears she sees Pyrrha, looks over, there's nothing there, and Salem crossly, "Are you listening? Or is your head on straight?" And of course, Cinder makes an excuse and all seems well. With that, we have our groups. They are traveling. Crow and Ranger are traveling across the land to go to Mistral and get that list. And of course, Blake has gone back to Menagerie, and she's going to see what the hell is going on with, well, the White Fang and everybody else there. And with that, we open up on Volume 4.
Now, I'm usually averse to time skips, but actually, no. In this case, as tempting as it would be to do a bit of a time skip, that time skip isn't as massive as certain time skips in certain anime. We're only jumping by a few weeks. Now, first things first, to set up the board. The fall of Beacon did not result in a near worldwide communications blackout. It did result in communication difficulties within that area, but there are always contingencies in case of a communication breakdown. That's how this kind of thing works. The idea that taking out one cell tower should cause everybody to not be able to utilize scroll communication is laughable.
Not to mention the fact that this is a communications network that someone like the very militant Atlas relies on. There's no fucking way it would be designed without some robustness and redundancy in mind. Otherwise, Atlas would never go in on it, and they'd just develop a side communication project all their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially because the kingdoms are allied now doesn't mean they're going to be forever.
And while in the aftermath of what happened, a lot of the kingdoms kind of went back in a mindset of we need to take care of our own before we can even think about taking care of others. But there has been a good amount of humanitarian effort when it comes to everybody who basically has no place to go after Beacon went belly up. Because remember, we already established that Beacon Academy has a bit of a college town approach. And Atlas has lent a fair amount of its ships to help with transportation for refugees. And there's been refugee camps set up all over the place in that region for people who don't want to leave or can't. And a lot of the hunters who were in that region have instead of focusing on their usual jobs, have had to focus on shifting into protection for these camps. And while Atlas lost a lot of equipment in the battle, they didn't lose all of it.
I don't think they even lost most of it. They only lost some of what they sent.
Yeah.
Atlas would never reveal their full hand to the Vital Festival.
No.
Right.
Now,
Otherwise, it'd probably be a declaration of war.
Yeah. Now, in canon, the reason why Mistral was short-staffed was because everybody was working on jobs for plot. In our case, the reason why they're short-staffed is Mistral has sent a lot of its hunters, because of the relationship that they have with Beacon, over to help out with the relief efforts. So there's still a fair amount of hunters. It's just skeleton crew.
Yep. Every hand on deck, all hands aware of what needs to be going on.
Mm-hmm. And we do still have team junior / ranger along with Crow, as it continuing on their journey. As an aside, I still like the fact that we had that gag of him, instead of him showing up midway through, him showing up from the get-go and cutting to Ty giving him the death stare. I figured I'd tag along with you. Then he looks back for a second and sees Ty just staring right at him and just shudders. But this particular journey and doing occasional stuff. Eventually, they think, hey, there's according to the map, there should be a town nearby, which makes Ren and Nora a little bit nervous when the town is mentioned. But they figure even if the town's in bad shape, at least there'd be houses, so they wouldn't have to sleep in tents all the time. But first off, the town is still abandoned. There's still to the point where there's still buildings that weren't finished. But second, there is somebody there. It's Tyrion.
Oh, this asshole.
And even though Salem has appeared, I'm not in favor of the idea of cutting to scenes with Salem, her court, and Cinder. I would rather keep the focus on the people that we're actually following.
Thank you.
So in this kind of situation, we don't have the scene of Tyrion getting his orders. He just shows up.
I mean, just from a storyteller's perspective, what purpose did it serve for us to see Tyrion getting his orders in the first place?
Especially since all that it does is demonstrate that he is working under Salem. Beyond, it's not like there was any other detail that's gleaned from that. And
not to mention that it only gives that information to the observer. It doesn't give that information to Team RWBY.
Yeah.
Or in this case, Team Ranger.
So
I guess you could make the argument for dramatic irony, but it's not executed good enough for that to.
And
no.
we here in the Monastery and in GeekWatch have the policy of, if what if it's not going to add anything, why put it in?
I was having some discussion with some other writers and a different fandom the other day, but we basically, one of the key things when you're writing a story is you want to keep in mind that there are certain things that you need to allow your readers, or in this case your viewers, to glean for themselves. You can't hand them every single detail for your story and your plot, or it'll get boring and they'll go, okay, well, why the fuck am I here?
And in this
I mean,
particular case, you have instead of the story of this person is trying to capture Ruby, you have the story of who is this guy, why is he here, and why is he so gung ho about following the orders of his queen.
uh-huh. And to me, as a storyteller myself, I'm much more intrigued when you don't tell me right off the bat, oh, this is this guy, he serves so and so, and he's here to wreak havoc for the team. No, give me some mystery. Let me discover along the way what it's like to find out, okay, what is this guy's motives? Who does he work for? Don't just hand everything to me on a silver fucking platter.
It also adds rewatch value
Yes.
and keeps the viewer more invested.
Yes. Yes.
Now, with that in mind, the fight does play out the way it did in canon. Team Ranger trying to fight him up, but he's just way too skilled, and it takes Crow stepping in to kind of turn the tide. Which it starts out with the whole team fighting against him, but it becomes very apparent early on that if they keep trying to butt in, they're going to get in the way. And I do want to put out as I mentioned when we discussed this in the past, I do want to put up the false flag where Team Ranger thinks that the queen that he's referring to is Cinder.
Yes.
Which would be a rational thing to think at this juncture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is also at the same time. In the first arc, we mentioned that we were putting the focus on exploring Team RWBY. In this particular arc, it's the former Team Juniper that is going to be getting a lot more of the development. In particular, Ren and Nora. Now, with Ren, by this point, he just coming back to the place where one, he ended up meeting Nora, and two, where everything went to shit. He has a bit of survivor's guilt and not wanting to stand out, having a let the adults handle this kind of thing. We're completely out of our depth here. Nora on the other hand, I would say a lot of the more happy-go-luckiness with Nora is still present, but it ends up shifting. But in the aftermath of that particular fight, they do continue on their particular journey, and instead of making camp in a random spot, we decided that the place that they're making camp used to be a camp for the Bronwyn. It's been abandoned, but there's still enough stuff around. You know, enough to put a few supplies together, and this is where And the sole reason they end up finding it is because Crow knows about it, which is where you can get into that campfire discussion that Crow has with the others.
Is Crow still poisoned?
I didn't see a point in having him be poisoned.
Right.
The poisoning felt like false drama.
Yeah.
Uh,
I could see that.
But this is where he gives a bit more explanation on Ozpin's inner circle and a bit of the relics, because in the midst of this he ends up talking about his experience the last time he met with his sister, shortly after everything went to shit. And in canon, this was a tense back and forth. In our case, instead of going with a tense back and forth, no. If you're gonna have a tavern in a fantasy story, you gotta have a bar fight.
Right.
Here, here.
Besides, it's made perfectly clear that Raven and Crow hate each other. But in the process of that particular fight, Crow does let slip that about the whole thing of a stolen relic. And the thing that I want to make clear with this is the Bronwyns are supposed to be a clan of thieves and bandits. But we never see them do a whole lot of thieving. We get the bandit part just from how they carry themselves. But if you're gonna claim that you're a bunch of thieves, show it.
It's because of Crow, in a moment of passion, letting slip that they lost a relic, and that Raven should have been there for her family. Mm-hmm. That's one of his big things. In their internecine argument being that she feels Crow abandoned the Bronwyn clan. He feels that they had to change because now they're responsible for a new family. Because he's Uncle Crow now. He can't just be some irresponsible dickhead who, does banditry and thievery. And these clashing ideals are very evident in the bar fight as well. So when he lets that slip, that she should have been there to help, and had she followed him, she would have been there to help.
Mm-hmm.
But because he let that slip, now Raven is on the after the fight's all over and Crow is left. Now Raven's thinking, if one relic can be stolen, why can't I have my own?
And the primary reason she would have that kind of thinking is, her mindset is the continued survival of the Bronwyn clan.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's the same type of tribalism. It's just tribes.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm using clan and tribe interchangeably in this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But a lot of this particular thing I'm skimming over a lot because it's mostly the crew traveling. But in between some of the towns they do pass by, Crow is writing letters to Tai, because there's still communication issues with scrolls, and real-time communication is a gamble. There's been a bit of a resurgence of letter carrying. So he's been writing letters to Tai to report on Ruby's safety.
Mm-hmm.
I will note that around this time, this is when Jean upgrades his weapon. The main thing that I would change in this is not Jean using Pyrrha's weapon to do this upgrade. This is him taking what he already had and redesigning it.
Because as we've established, Jean is all about self-improvement, consistent and constant self-improvement.
Yes.
So as he changes the tools he uses to better suit him.
Mm-hmm. I would say he has the same amount of armor.
He probably didn't need any more.
Because to be quite honest, I'd say the two primary characters who the art style change affected the least are Jean and probably Nora. Like the color scheme didn't change all that much.
I mean, they basically have the same outfits.
Which is all that one would really ask for. And now that brings us to some of the B plots that we're dealing with. One of them is the fact that Yang got wind of one of the letters and has been reading them on her own,
sneaking them away from Tai when she can.
But the bigger one I want to focus on for the time being is what's going on with Weiss. She did go back to Atlas, but we're not doing the bird in a gilded cage shit that they did. Mostly because we don't have Weiss's father being this poor man's parody of rich man bad.
Instead, she is being raised as the next ruthless business CEO of Schnee Dust Company. Or at least, that's how her father would want it. He still sees her as too idealistic, but she's still way more competent than her brother. Now, we only get little clips and snips of this as background. A radio broadcast here, something on one of the televisions there. Achievements that are coming from Weiss left and right. Like she knows that while she's there, she might as well do something productive, and the skills she's learning, as much as she doesn't want to apply them in the way that her father would want her to apply them, are still useful. Any tool is a good tool in the right hands.
Now, that being said, the whole singing at a concert thing, we took that out. Doesn't really fit. Especially doesn't fit the direction that we're going.
I figure that... Oh, go ahead.
What was even the purpose of that at the first part? That was something that always confused me when I watched through it.
So I think my best guess is that in the original trailer, the white trailer, that's how she was introduced. Is she was doing some concert or some competition, so she was announced, and that was the setup for the song, the background song, while she was thinking about this other memory she had of fighting, and that was the introduction to the fight scene of the trailer. So they just wanted to bring that element back because it hasn't been part of the show.
And that's fucking stupid, because a concept trailer is not the same thing as the goddamn show.
Not to mention, how many seasons is this into the show at this point, and they're just now deciding to do a callback?
4.
Yeah. The
If you're gonna do a callback like that, put it in the first or second season. You don't wait 4 entire seasons, because most of the people are going to have shit memories and go, why is this here? You know, kind of like we're doing right now.
Yep.
To be a little fair, just to play devil's advocate, they did do a callback in Volume 3 with the little miniature knight that she summons, because that was who she was fighting in that trailer. But that
Weak.
said, still
Yeah.
too little, too late.
As Monk said, weak. So
that was still Volume 3.
yeah.
Correct.
I also foresee that while her dad doesn't like her idealism, he's not going to intentionally sabotage her in media either. So many of the articles are going to be something about the prodigy daughter of the Schnee family, or the scion of the Schnee family, because she's being seen as the next person to head Schnee Dust Company now. And it's being publicized. Her achievements are constantly getting broadcast, because her father, despite being kind of an asshole and a ruthless businessman, because he is a ruthless businessman, understands the value of publicity. Mm-hmm. And so
also understands that her reputation is hand in hand with the family reputation.
And that her reputation will reflect even greater on him, not just for his business acumen, but for his foresight in saying, well, my son isn't the best, so I'll go with my much more competent daughter. He'll be seen as a visionary. He'll be seen as progressive. He'll be seen as he's willing not to pass it on to the male, but the one person who can do the best with the job, etc. So it's all self-serving, but it all still serves to give us so many Chekhov's guns of Weiss. So many. It's a Chekhov's arsenal.
Armory.
A Chekhov's arm.
You're not wrong, but you're also not right.
I'm not saying that it really matters. I'm just saying, if we're being specific, the trope is Chekhov's armory.
I do what I want.
I acknowledge.
Pedantry in its finest.
But
no, it's not. We have a reputation to maintain.
We are pedantic, petty bastards. Also, it would be an arsenal because the Schnee Dust Company is basically tied to the Atlas military. Let's be honest here. And the Atlas military is the government. So she's a government weapon of a government sponsored company.
Yeah.
Got it. Aha.
Now that
not so different from her sister then in that case.
We have an opportunity to do a shut up Wheatley moment.
Yeah.
Because we either want to reference Star Trek The Next Generation or Portal 2 or both. Why not both? It's got to be both.
Both is good.
Exactly.
And I'd say that in this case you don't have you do have Wesley still Whitley. Damn it, I did it too. Still acting like a smug prick, but it's not a case of rubbing it in that she's the odd girl out, but more him being entitled, thinking that he deserves the spot of being the heir.
Until, Weiss smashes his face in, figuratively speaking, with her competency.
But even with that, Weiss still has the ideal of wanting to wanting to live up to this idea of nobility that she has regarding past generations of the Schnee family.
Mm-hmm. She still wants the noblesse oblige.
Mm-hmm. Now as far as her mother, wouldn't change too much on that.
I forgot her mom's a character.
Mostly because she only showed up twice because of her drinking. I wouldn't have as far as how we'd work with her in this kind of situation. The reason that her mother is reclusive is because she believes that everybody's running off on their own thing and she's being left in the dust.
Pun intended.
No, but I'll take it. But consider this: Winter joined the military. Weiss is primarily focused on being trained to be the heir to the company. Wesley is more about. Damn it! I did it again. Wheatley is more about himself, and doesn't even like her. And her husband is too wrapped up in the day-to-day operations of the company, especially with all the stuff that's happened over the last few weeks. But we are still going with the idea that the reason Weiss reunites with her friends is not some breakout, but rather her realizing some odd things going on with appearances of the White Fang in the headlines. Now, would she be someone who has newspaper clippings all over the walls in this kind of investigation? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. She's been learning from, her father how to look at the bigger picture, because that's how you run a company.
Yeah.
So, is she going to reenact the strings and photos? Absolutely, because it's the only thing that makes sense to her in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And seeing that because a lot of people still have the mindset that the White Fang is a decently sized company of mercenaries, not something that would be a major threat. But seeing their appearances in way too many places for a company of that size is what's causing the concern.
Mm-hmm.
And her reasoning for going off is to figure out why, because she's not going to be able to because she trying to hire out hunters or scouts to try and figure this stuff out. It would move way too slowly.
It wouldn't be cost effective.
No, because you have to get them out, get them in the right place, somehow get them to luck out and find them, and then be able to report back without getting shot. But since a lot of the movement is the whole thing with the White Fang is they are a majority faunus company, then her idea is, I'm going to head to Menagerie, see if Blake can figure out what's going on with the White Fang. And if she can't, maybe the people who run the Menagerie can help me. At least use Blake as the in to talk with the higher ups.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Would they have known that her parents are the leaders at that point, or no?
I think in this case, Blake would have told them once they trusted each other enough.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, Ruby and Yang would have talked about their family, especially with Crow being nearby all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Weiss can't hide who her family is. That's impossible. I think once Blake had trusted them enough, probably sometime in the middle of Volume 2, after they'd really come together, they'd apprehended Torchwick at the end of Volume 1, although he still got away. Things of that nature. I think at some point Blake would have opened up to them and been like, "Yeah, I kind of come from a bigger family over in Menagerie," and explains, her mom and dad are the heads, and then someone, probably Yang, would make a joke about, we have not one but two princesses in our team.
Even if that wasn't the case, Weiss would have figured it out just by doing all the investigating she was doing.
Yeah. I mean, the investigation would have lent to that too. I don't know if it's necessary to give her that tiny extra bit, though, Monk.
No, it's not. It's not necessary. I'm just pointing out, one way or another, she'd have already known by some point.
Yeah, I think the fact that we're going to have her reenact the strings and pictures scene is both kind of a gag and also a serious moment as to how she actually figures things out is more than enough to give Weiss credit for being able to see the big picture really clearly now.
Mm-hmm. So, with that in mind, that brings us to Volume 5, which is where we focus a bit more on the goings-on of Menagerie as our A plot, and our B plot focusing on Yang. Because instead of trying to do three plots at once, we're just splitting it off. And this is where our attention would focus more on Menagerie. Now, we already mentioned the motivations that Blake has and the motivation that Weiss has. I would still do the whole thing of Blake taking a boat back to Menagerie, and Sun sneaking aboard as a stowaway.
Yeah.
And as far as how Blake would find out, given that it's Sun, if I were directing it, I'd probably have it that we're seeing Blake on the ship, but it's from somebody's first person perspective, as if he's hiding, and then Blake is like, "You can stop hiding, you know."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're gonna try and out stealth somebody who has so much of a ninja aesthetic.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah. Now, I think the approach we had with the founding of Menagerie is that it was essentially an area of land that no nation wanted, so they took it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't bill itself as a "you're only allowed to be here if you're a faunus" kind of thing. We're not, since we aren't doing the racism bad analogy with the faunus, because as we mentioned last time, the way they handled it was so ham-fisted. The approach that we're taking instead is that this is a neutral ground for anybody who just doesn't fit in the place where they come from.
Which makes a whole lot more sense.
Especially the way Menagerie looked on the show looked like a frontier town.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing is they allow it, anyone who's basically outcast, as we just said, to live there. Human, faunus, doesn't matter. The only thing is they need to be willing to help out because, as you pointed out, it's like a frontier town, and in the frontier towns, well, we all lift, and we're all adrift together. Together. There you go.
Yeah.
I told you I'd use this gag at some point, Monk.
It's a good song.
Oh, it's not the Mickey. This is not the first time we've used that song.
Oh, I'm sure.
Go check the Adventures Academy episode when you get the chance. You'll see it getting referenced there as well. But at the same time, while that bit of traveling is happening, we also have Adam having to face the music regarding what he did, and a lot of if I were writing this out as a scene, I would have it that Adam's walking closer and closer to the chambers while other people passing by are whispering about how he was demanded to meet with Sienna, because I'm trying to do this as a callback to how everybody was so scared of Shere Khan in the Jungle Book.
I like that.
And Sienna, who is still on a throne raised by a bunch of stairs looking down at him, because that's what you should do if you're gonna have a big throne room. She is not happy one bit with all the shit that went down in Beacon.
Can you blame her?
For two reasons. One, it's drawing a lot of attention and people thinking that we're terrorists. And two, we haven't been able to get into contact with Torchwick, so when are we getting paid?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Sienna's more upset about the not getting paid part. Like, sure, he damaged the White Fang reputation, which is bad. It means less contracts.
Mm-hmm.
But where's our goddamn money?
All of that stuff and all of the damage to equipment and lives, and we're not getting anything out of it. Especially since the whole thing of working with Torchwick was Adam's idea.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those, you done fucked up, Aaron. moments.
But Sienna's view on Adam in this is that he is a good subordinate, he does get results, but he's a loose cannon.
Give me your badge and your gun.
She's entertained She's entertained the whole thing because regardless of his methods, he did get results. But she's given him way too many chances. And before Adam can even voice in protest, I'd say that's where we have Sienna just wipe the floor with him.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because she didn't even get a chance to fight in the original. I know there's probably some expanded material where she did show why she is the leader of the White Fang, but once again, if it's supplemental material, I don't count it.
Yep.
Yeah, we never got to see that in the show.
Yeah. So Sienna basically beats the ever-living fuck out of him and puts him in the brig to await the firing squad.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we have the Monk brothers, who I'm not going to remember their names because all I see of them is people trying to be monks, and they're twins anyways, which makes it even worse.
Are they actually named?
They are. I just don't recall the names. So, and I keep calling them the Monk brothers in my heads and in my internal notes, so that's stuck.
I mean, if they were given names, but we don't remember them, that doesn't say a whole lot for the characters.
Mm-hmm. But they are meant to be both recruiters and a public face in Menagerie for the White Fang, which helps that whole mindset that a lot of people have of they're just a bunch of Faunus mercenaries. And the sales pitch is you have these gifts. Why not use them to put food on your family's table?
Mm-hmm.
The big reason for this is that when Blake is trying to make the case for the White Fang's involvement, a lot of people in Menagerie don't believe it, or that it was a rogue faction that has been disavowed, because that's what the brothers have been saying. They're the propaganda piece for the White Fang.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also a good opportunity to go further into why Blake left Menagerie and why, of all things, she decided to become a huntress instead of just becoming an independent mercenary. For one, she had a hero worship problem with Adam. We've established that it's more hero worship instead of the were they dating kind of shit.
Thank you. We can remove the relationship drama.
Like, the only reason that Adam would have wanted it at all is by marrying her, he gains legitimacy towards the throne of Menagerie. That's literally the only reason.
Well, meta reason would be because it's Beauty and the Beast, but it...
That is such a far take from Beauty and the Beast, even
know.
meta-wise, that if that was their excuse for it, they're fucking retarded.
I mean, let's be real. The execution of Adam was the clumsiest writing, I think, even in all of RWBY.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is the worst handled character.
Which is why our Adam is better.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
We leaned into more of a Char-like route.
And Blake is not his Lala soon.
No.
Just with Char getting involved with teenagers.
Ew.
I mean, Char was 21, Lala was 17, so...
Still illegal.
It's Japan. Illegal in the US, not in Japan.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, after she left, she didn't know where she wanted to go except not here, and ended up wandering around until she ended up meeting Ozpin. And even to this day, she's not sure if she just happened to meet Ozpin by luck or if that was arranged by him. And of course, Ozpin's not telling. But her attitude, because we've stated before, the Faunus lean more towards pragmatism. She's still an idealist of wanting to make a better life for the Faunus, because even though one can make a nice life for themselves in Menagerie, it's not exactly going to be a comfortable life. It's still going to be pretty tough because you're out in the middle of nowhere. And she thought the White Fang was an organization that could better help, but decided the Hunters are the better avenue. In other words, she's started. The approach that we've taken with Blake is that she started out as a pure pragmatist, but is learning to understand the value of an emotive angle.
Yeah, idealism.
Mm-hmm.
She's learning to mix idealism with pragmatism to come up with an even bigger picture and a bigger dream.
Yeah. And with this brings us to the B side that we have with Yang, which is Yang's B plot is something that we'd probably dedicate if we were doing this episode by episode, we'd dedicate a few minutes each.
Mm-hmm.
The approach is that instead of utilizing instead of all of a sudden getting a physical arm that's made with Atlas level tech shortly after she lost her original.
She is instead still trying to overcome the loss of her arm.
Mm-hmm.
And Tai is trying to help as much as he possibly can. And through this, Yang has come through a realization. She can't keep blocking with her face.
No.
It just doesn't work in the end. After all, she lost an arm trying that.
Mm-hmm.
So she screws up the courage to go, Dad, teach me how to fight.
Mm-hmm. And it's
You mean she actually swallows some of her anger and her arrogance and decides, maybe there is a right way to do this?
Yes, she absolutely does.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! Character growth and development.
And
what a novel concept.
This is where we hint at something else that was brought up really late into the Atlas arc, but we're cutting it off at the pass, and two, since we have an understanding of this kind of thing, doing a more consistent job with it, and that is the fact that semblances are ingrained in the person's outlook, personality, and so on, and because of that, a change of outlook can result in a change of semblance.
Yes. Yang's semblance is no longer, I get hit, I hit you harder. She is not Vegeta anymore.
Thank you.
Ultra ego? Yeah, she doesn't need that.
No. Instead, it's about the manipulation of light.
Mm-hmm.
More specifically, being able to create a light construct, which is how she makes her second arm. And if any of you are thinking of the shadow arm that Ceres Victoria has in the latter end of Hellsing, yeah, same thing.
I thought of a different inspiration personally, because a shadow arm of devil powers is not what we're looking at here. We're looking at light. Has anybody seen Evangelion 2.0 movie and the part where AT Field turns into giant glowy arm that shoots a cannon-sized hole through the angel? Yeah, that was my vision of it.
Fair. Obviously, she's not shooting cannon-sized holes.
She could, though. If she really wanted to. She'd just lose use of that arm until she could reform all the light.
Mm-hmm. But the big reason that I wanted to tie into this is that nickname that Tai gives her. That and well, Yang's name, Yang Xiaolong.
Because that's not a bit on the nose!
No. But
isn't that like Little Sun or Sun Dragon? Was that what it was?
Sunny Little Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
We also start to see from the way Tai and Yang are interacting that the reason Yang is so protective of RWBY, it's Tai's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Tai's a helicopter parent in many different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, he's lost both his wives. You almost can't blame him.
Mm-hmm.
You can't blame him, but it certainly doesn't help their development.
No.
Right.
No.
But because of this, there's a bit of a shift in how Yang fights.
Mm-hmm.
It's less of the blocking with my face and more of understanding the 4 Ds of dodgeball.
It's the way I see it. It's It's like she's playing a Toho game. She's trying to get all the bullets grazing, but never actually touching her.
Yeah, but there's other angles like a literal flash step, i.e. blinding somebody so you can reposition.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot of people associate light magic with illusions. That's not the case here.
Yeah, that's Blake's thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, both Blake and Sun, just in different ways.
Oh, that's true. There are too many semblances and not enough distinctive ones.
Which is why I find our own writing funny, because, well, with UA Great Lakes we came up with 10 power sets that are very distinct from each other.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's almost like we have an imagination.
Yeah, but
wow, what a concept!
But because of the connections that she's able to get, being able to catch up with her sister isn't too hard. She'd end up meeting them up at Haven. Although I would probably do a gag of the pilot saying "hold on tight." If only because we're dealing if the transportation is going to be that quick, it means we're dealing with sound barrier level speeds, and also there is also the fact of we've all seen Men in Black, so remember fasten your seatbelt, please. When he says that in that vehicle, he absolutely means it.
Just whatever you do, don't press the red button.
Mm-hmm.
Except this time, push the red button.
Yeah. But anybody who's been on one of those starship rides at a fair or been in a centrifuge knows the reason why I say hold on tight, because no matter what, you're going to be holding on for dear life at that speed.
Yep.
So if you need to do a gag of her having the face moment of not being able to move, that's the point to do it. Because, well, she's certainly no stranger to high speeds with the whole thing with her bike. It's one thing to go from that to going at near sonic speeds. But there's a couple minor things with volume 5 that I wanted to cover. One of them being being Ozpin. In the show, they had it that Oscar shows up as the next incarnation. That is not the approach we're doing. When things went bad, Ozpin tried to do a transportation spell to get out of the firing line, which it worked, kind of. The plan was for him to end up in Haven. He didn't end up in Haven.
He ended up in some backwoods farming community.
Mm-hmm. And because of the fact that people presumed him dead, he changed his appearance. Oscar is just a cover.
In fact, the way Ozpin has been changed is he's an immortal, and he just shapeshifts every so often. There's none of this fucking soul transfer bullshit. It's just the same guy. Over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
He's just different faces.
If you have
different
to make illusions
curtains, you might say.
Yeah. If you have to make illusions to the Doctor, you wouldn't be far off.
Now, does he have 2 souls or 2 hearts in this iteration, or is this just he is an immortal shapeshifter?
He is an
I'm
immortal
asking for
shapeshifter.
Yeah, I'm asking for the sake of clarity for our audience here.
He
It
is
was more.
Go ahead, Sen.
I was going to say the comparison to the Doctor was more about how he's an immortal who changes his faces every so often, not the literal "I'm a Time Lord with two hearts."
Yeah.
He is an immortal shapeshifter who changes himself as soon as things start to become a little suspicious. You know, that Oz guy has been around for a while. He doesn't seem to age a day. Oh shit, I better go.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big reason why I said that is with all of the Doctor's incarnations, it's reshuffling of personality traits that the Doctor always has. Just some are more emphasized than others, depending on which one.
Mm-hmm.
All the Doctors are somewhat arrogant, but some are more arrogant than others. For instance,
Can we also just take a moment and acknowledge the fact that the two souls thing never really made sense?
Thank you.
Why do you think I
Thank
called
you.
it bullshit?
mm-hmm.
I mean, like, they were trying to, like, imply it or set it up from the beginning, arguably, because they did mention it in, like, the first episode, but it still never made sense.
Mentioning it is not enough.
Yeah.
And see,
That was it.
here's my big question and concern. When you've supposedly got somebody with two souls, how do you determine which one is more dominant than the other? What is the purpose of having two separate souls?
No, we don't need to ask them their bedroom motivations.
What?
More dominant than the other.
Gosh dang it.
That was not where I was going with that, but
Well,
if the shoe fit.
The other problem with how they did that setup is the question of what about all the other incarnations? It's not like is it a case where one of them is added and my name is Legion?
Or is it a case of one for all?
Yeah.
Where the incarnation of each power holder is in it, but it doesn't really affect the main holder.
Or is it, like, the idea that, like, the two souls merge, or one just goes away, but then that's not really two souls now, is it?
No, it's not. There's more questions than answers when you have that concept of a man with two souls. It doesn't make sense.
I'm just going to put this image in everybody's mind real quick of Daddy Dom Ozpin and Twink Oscar.
Oh, God.
Thanks. I hate it.
That was the point. I had to bane everyone.
Kill it with fire. Oh my God.
So, with that, but because of that, a immortal who just takes on different disguises with time made far more sense to us.
Yeah, because it reconciles the fact that he's going to be a person who knows how to fake it to make it. You know, putting on the act that he needs to put on in each place that he's at.
Mm-hmm.
But still have all of the knowledge that he does without really any break in it either. He has all that knowledge because he's been the same person the entire time. And he just puts on some masks when he needs to be a different person.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, his mask is literally changing his body with spells, but, you know, still, same idea applies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Man of 1,000 Faces, Mickey.
Uh-huh.
We all know that's my type.
Yep.
Daddy Dom Ozpin confirmed?
Ew.
I should note that we do have that it's at the end of Volume 5 where Oscar actually shows up. just saying, hey, just showing up with since I'd say by this point they've Team Ranger has made it to Haven, and in the midst of that, Oscar shows up, manages to find Crow and says, "I'd like to have my cane back."
Mm.
And the reason this is at the end of Volume 5 is due to the fact that everyone's coming together now. Weiss got to Menagerie, helped out Blake. The stuff that happens there that we're going to discuss here in a second happens, and then they all get going towards Haven as well.
Yeah. Now, a couple of minor things that I need to note before we get to Volume 6. One, we do have the moment of Adam seemingly put up against the wall to be executed by firing squad. But when Sienna says fire, they do fire by turning around and shooting her.
Yeah.
Basically, the people who were going to be handling the shot are more loyal to Adam.
And Sienna is left for dead as Adam gathers the White Fang after his coup to go to Haven because taking over Menagerie can happen later. However, Sienna's not down and out. We're not killing off a cool character that way.
No.
Thank you. They have this really bad habit of introducing these really cool characters and concepts and then immediately throwing them away without utilizing them in the slightest.
Well, because they got to make room for the new characters they'll introduce.
Can you give us?
My sarcasm is palpable.
Develop the characters you've got instead of just completely throwing new ones at us every season. People like to have characters that they can relate to, that they can say, hey, I like this character even though they're a bad guy. They're a well-written bad guy. Looking at you, Torchwick. Give us characters that we want to see succeed or fail. Don't just keep throwing them away so you can bring in, let's try a new concept.
They're jingling keys. That's why they do it. They're jingling keys.
Yes. Now,
Pet peeve of mine.
I will note as well, Crow and Raven weren't given the bird power. That's just That's just a part of their semblances.
I don't think it's even a part of their semblance.
Nope.
I think it's beyond their semblance.
It's beyond their semblance, but it's natural to them.
Yeah, it's a piece of true magic somewhere in their bloodline that just manifested. Kind of like a recessive gene coming out after generations of being recessive.
An atavism.
Yeah, an activism, exactly.
I will note that when it comes to Adam's relationship with Salem, he's well aware that both of them are that she's using him as much as it's the other way around. So it's they're working together, but I'd hardly call them allies.
He doesn't trust her, but he follows the orders because it's pragmatic to further his own interests.
And that brings us to Volume 6. And I should note from here on, you're going to see a bit of a pattern when we do with the volumes that we do of setting up the board, moving the pieces, and then checkmate.
I would like to say, actually, just before we get to Volume 6, Weiss shows up at Menagerie as Adam has made his coup and is moving out, and Blake is wondering what to do. Weiss shows up to give her the motivation of, I know where they're going next. And Blake is, how can you know that? And, of course, Weiss is just like, because I thought about it.
But the full court that's been referred to as Team Witch is revealed in Volume 6.
Really, they're. I
And
guess.
By this point, eventually you do have everybody. Like we said before, we have everybody heading towards Haven, and this I'd actually say in this kind of situation, Weiss was probably able to get some experimental tech to get around quickly.
Well, probably something Schnee Dust Company has.
Mm-hmm. Something they have, but is still in the testing phase.
Mm-hmm.
Which, given how inventions work with companies, a testing phase could be months.
Mm-hmm.
They could think of this as the shakedown run.
Mm-hmm. That's the reason why I brought up the Baron. That thing had so many troubles during its testing phase that they had to fix, and then it couldn't do its job.
Mm-hmm.
At least do its job effectively. But the other thing that we would go with is that I know Leo was supposed to be a nod to the Cowardly Lion because there's that whole Wizard of Oz motif with Ozpin and his inner circle. But just because you lean into that, the amount of leaning into the stories that inspire certain characters is wildly inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, like, call back to discussion on Oscar's design. There's nothing of Dorothy in him. Pretty sure he's supposed to be. Unless RWBY's supposed to be Dorothy. Because that was also a discussion.
And if you're going to do that, then go all in on referencing those stories a la Fate, instead of this half-assed thing. Because if you're trying to say that the reason why Leo is a coward is because he's a nod to the Cowardly Lion, that ends up creating more questions than you're willing to answer. Because if that's the case for one, why is that not the case for so many other within just the core cast alone?
Like, obviously Crow has a brain.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Crow has a brain. Jean isn't pretending that he's chosen by God.
Or a female.
Mm-mm.
How much of Blake is it? How much of Belle is in Blake?
She likes books.
That's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't live a provincial life. She was a goddamn, I mean, in all effects, princess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even make, like, Beast comparison. That's what you wanted to do, because that's...
The Beauty and the Beast unit in Metal Gear Solid 4 did a better job referencing that.
This is true. And that's sad. That's sad when that's true, Monk.
Truth is the greatest comedy.
It's also the greatest tragedy.
Yeah.
But I would... Like, it's supposed to be an allusion to the Cowardly Lion because he's part of the inner circle. But the man's last name is Lionheart.
Yeah.
You are referencing Richard the fucking Third. Are you goddamn dense?
Probably.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to be as dense as Neutronium, but that's a different story.
Fuck it, they're off the atomic scale.
Like Neutronium, which is neutron decay, Monka, the center of a neutron star.
Fair. The point is, Leo is at best he's stressed because he's trying to hold down the fort and trying to spin multiple plates at once.
I'd argue the man is we could actually do a Richard III reference here that it's not cowardly in bowing to someone. He's imprisoned at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, against his will, against a greater force.
Yeah.
It
And
also would make sense as to why he's in Ozpin's inner circle instead of him being this coward that doesn't really do anything, so you're left wondering why he's there.
mhm.
Oh, because he's one of the headmasters. And didn't you know
Okay.
that all of the inner circle are the headmasters and close people to Oz?
Okay, so then why did Ozpin let him become a headmaster?
Well, in our
These are the
version,
questions.
in our version, he's not a coward. We just said that.
Yeah.
He's not a coward. He's not ineffective. The reason Ozpin let him become a headmaster in the academy system that Ozpin set up, because he's competent, just like Goodwitch is competent.
Mhm.
He trusts his inner circle because he knows their competency. It's very clear he trusts Crow, our Crow especially, because Crow is good at what he does. And he also wanted to turn over a new leaf and become a better person.
Yeah. That's one of the major themes with a lot of the inner circle of people wanting to be better after meeting. Actually, I'd say that's a major theme with Ozpin, him giving people a second chance.
Yeah, he's not like while he is a reference to the Wizard of Oz. In this case, it's not the man hiding behind the curtain. It is the man influencing Oz to be a better place. Everyone in our system that he's met, RWBY, Blake, his inner circle, a bunch of people, they've all wanted to become better than what they were, and he just gave them the means to do so. He gave them a path. He gave them a hint. He gave them a position, whatever it might be. They then took the start he gave them, and they ran with it.
Yeah. Now, a lot of what happened in Volume 6 is going to be the Battle of Haven / the Battle of the Vault. Because shortly after everybody reunites, that's when the White Fang decides to make their assault. Because hey, there's going to be less hunters there, so we can just raise the place and possibly raid it for a treasure trove's worth of resources and weapons. You know, a good old fashioned raid action.
Yep.
Which I'd say the way I'd have it is that the first wave of it is focused mostly on Team Ranger trying to defend things. It's only later on that first off Yang shows up to help out. Then, but one soldier isn't gonna be enough in that kind of situation. Even if it's a showcase of everything that she's learned by this point. But that's when Blake and Weiss show back up, and they brought friends.
Because Weiss sees the bigger picture. She's like, we need more people.
Not just some people from Atlas, but also the Menagerie's militia.
Only half of the militia, though. Weiss did take the time to warn Gira and Kali, who are already, by the way, we didn't mention this, Gira and Kali Belladonna are the ones who saved Sienna and are nursing her in secrecy. There's even a scene where she's like, I'm gonna go kill him! And she's covered in bandages and shit. And they're like, no, you idiot. If you go out now, you just paint a target on yourself. Rest, get better, and then go kill the idiot. And so Weiss also takes this time to warn, Adam's got what looks to be a very large plan and she shows them the same thing she's been showing everybody else, a snapshot of her strings and pictures wall, which still makes her look a little bit crazy.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, because they're not sure how this figures until she explains it, and they're like, oh, yeah. And that gives Menagerie time to shore up their defenses for when Adam tries to return. So, they've only got about half the Menagerie militia with them.
Yeah.
which is still a lot of goddamn faunus and humans.
Mm-hmm. That being said, in the chaos of that's where Raven shows up, because she figures, hey, they've got a vault. They're not going to be occupied with guarding it all that much, so we can sneak it in right. We can sneak it right in the middle of things. And this will play a factor later.
Yep. Raven is trying to sneak to the vault. Just keep that in mind.
Whereas Cinder is trying to sneak in as ordered to sneak in as well, because she's been told that in Haven is the Spring Maiden, which is technically true.
I mean, the Spring Maiden is there.
Mm-hmm. But we're not doing that whole Kagemusha fake out shit.
No,
or a poor man's Kagemusha, because the point of a Kagemusha is to look like who you're supposed to be impersonating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Unless you've never seen the person you're impersonating. Hello, Shiba Takeru. So, Cinder arrives first at the vault, by the way, because she was already there.
Mm-hmm. But the one of the recurring things with Cinder is that even though she accomplishes her orders, her mindset is that she has eyes bigger than her stomach. Because her mindset is, hey, if I'm here to find the Spring Maiden, but if I can find the relic as well, all the better.
Mm-hmm. Her reach extending beyond her grasp.
Mm-hmm. Good poem, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Very good poem. And so when she arrives in the vault, she doesn't know how to open it. She doesn't see a Spring Maiden. She's kind of pissed off. And then Raven shows up. And we get an almighty beatdown.
Which, it does seem even at first, but that's only because one of them is relying on the maiden powers and the other one isn't. And once Raven actually starts using the maiden powers herself, since she's far more experienced of a fighter, she ends up just wiping the floor with Cinder. You know, the whole thing of okay, you had enough fun. Now it's time for you to get humbled. But in the meanwhile, because while the fight is and hello there, Sariana. Let me just put that in there. So, I'd say the fight happens right after the vault door opens. But by the time it's resolved, Raven goes in to try and get the relic, but it's already gone. Because let's not forget, there just happens to be a member of the cast who's very, very good at hiding their presence and making them hard to detect.
Yep.
Now, who in the world could that be?
Mm-hmm. during the fighting, because of the fact that in the middle of the fight, Ren spots Cinder heading into the area where the vault is and tracks her. And in the middle of it, that's when he puts two and two together and snatches what they were fighting over to begin with. The other thing to note in this is that by this point we've probably showcased that Weiss has figured out how to summon and summon the whole of the night.
Mm-hmm.
About time.
Well, and like we said, people's semblances change with their maturation and the changes in their mindset. But a change doesn't need to be nearly as drastic as what happened with Yang, because, well, what happened to Yang was drastic.
Right.
Yeah.
What happened to Weiss is just a widening of her mindset and of her skill set. So now she's better at summoning what she already had.
And an idea that I had considered, because the Weiss's whole thing is used at least until they forgot about it, was using different colored dust to basically be the mage of the party.
Mm-hmm.
And the approach that I'd rather go with is, instead of her utilizing one particular type of knight, she has multiple types. Zan, you've played Chaos Legion before, haven't you?
I have indeed.
That's where I'm kind of leaning.
I figure. If you don't want to go with Chaos Legion, you could always go with Pikmin.
Mm-hmm. She has multiple types to fill multiple roles, and in this way, the summoning is being utilized as a extension of what she was already doing.
Yeah, the dust essentially assigns different roles to her summons.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Pikmin.
Yeah.
I like using the sillier comparison sometimes, Monk.
Mm-hmm. But the other bit of surprise we see in this is what is by this point, Jean has been able to unlock his semblance
Fully, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And originally they decided to go with this idea that he can amplify other people's aura. That's not the approach that we're going with.
And to be honest, it's a really lame payoff for this big mystery that's been building up for, what, 6 seasons at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's 6
like
seasons.
that.
It's 6 seasons for us too. But you see, our payoff is much better.
He is akin. His approach is akin to a key sage.
He controls his aura deftly, to the point that it's even worthy of fine, dexterous pinpoint control.
Mm-hmm.
And also, well, he can shoot off his aura too. We even get a little blurb from Yang, who we did see her shooting off her hard light at some points.
But her shooting off hard light is more of a replication of the shotgun stuff that she was already doing.
Yeah, except now it's actually long range.
Mm-hmm.
She can also do it in close range, because that's also extra damage.
Yeah.
And besides, I still think that at some point she needs to do an Evangelion 2.0 style shooting off my entire arm to blast somebody point.
Mm-hmm.
That's just so cool, and it needs to be done. God damn it, we have to have our moments of cool.
No argument there.
And so when he does his aura slash that he now has, cuts somebody from across the battlefield with a giant crescent wave of aura, Yang's like, it took me forever to do that. How'd you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, Yang is then inspired to improve further because healthy rivalry.
Yeah, but the key thing is that there isn't something outright new that his semblance gives him. What his semblance allows him to do is able to do everything that aura kind of already does, but in a way better than what most people consider. So when it comes to, a lot of people have aura as a means to protect them in some sort of shield approach. His shield is at a point where things break hitting him.
Yep. He has very, very strong aura enhancement, both for attack and defense.
Mm-hmm. So this is an easy spot to have a gag of somebody trying to hit him, and their weapon just breaks as if they hit solid, as if they hit
Granite?
something a whole lot more. Yeah, hit solid granite.
Or one of the unarmed members of the White Fang tries to punch him, and their arm breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Whoops.
One of my favorite gags to pull, and it's always effective, so long as you don't overuse it.
Mm-hmm. Like most tropes.
Yes, overuse of a trope causes it to eventually become a cliche.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And damn it, spoiler. But this does mean concentrating that aura and firing it, which if that sounds like Getsuga Tensho, that's not far off.
No, that is Getsuga Tensho. That absolutely is just Getsuga Tensho. You concentrate all your Reiatsu along the edge of the blade, then swing and release it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same here. You concentrate all of your aura on the blade.
Zan, we lost you.
Swing it.
Mm-hmm. But the key thing, if it sounds like some people's semblances are going to be overpowered throughout this, the point that we're getting at is that we're aiming for variety in what people can do more and more. And in the aftermath, the White Fang is driven back, mostly because they realized once the cavalry came in and they started getting their ass kicked, we're not paid to fight to the last man. We're getting out. We are not Capellans.
This is not their cause.
No. And in the aftermath, the approach to that we're going with is that they had to make, obviously the White Fang suffered significant losses and had to do a tactical retreat. They're also still not getting paid, but Adam just looks at it as a setback. The team now has the Relic of Knowledge, and this is where you can have the revelation about what Ren was able to do, because he's started to learn because by this point he's started to learn to take his own initiative. Because you can't just rely on the adults to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So he always had the ability to hide his presence. He's just taking it a step further and going into full-on stealth mode. He isn't technically invisible. He's just not. You're just not able to perceive him with senses. Much in the same way that.
Would it be not being able to perceive him, or basically hiding, amongst what's already there? Like,
I think it's more the fact that he's still visible to people with, the ability to break past his semblance with their strength.
Mm-hmm.
But to anyone who's affected by the semblance, it's as if he doesn't exist in their periphery. Almost a minor version of what's happening to the maidens, except just on the senses rather than on the memory as well.
mm-hmm.
And of course, if he does something drastic, like accidentally knocking over a stack of newspapers, well, people are going to notice the newspapers and the sound that the newspapers make. Even if he's not there in their senses, they're still going to be suspicious. It doesn't keep him from accidentally raising the alarm on himself by doing, well, dumb things.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Now that being said, they do discover the name list, which was part of the reason they came here. That's the good news. The bad news is that the name list is out of date by a few years.
Just a few.
Like 50. Because the most recent name on the list, and the mark that of a very young hunter, at least they say it's young in the list, is one Grim Reaper, Maria Calavera, who Crow remarks on because he knows about her.
But they know. It is known that Atlas has would have a whole lot more intel regarding both the maidens and possibly the White Fang.
And even maybe the Silver Eyes, just because Atlas, well, they study everything. You know, and Weiss is the one essentially telling them, we've done research on a ton of things having to do with aura and semblance, the White Fang, you know, the Maiden powers, everything. There's a bunch of files back at the Dust Company, and I know Winter probably has some too, because of the military applications. And then, of course, Crow says, last I heard, Maria Calavera was also in Atlas. And so everything points towards Atlas.
Yeah. There are... I'd say the post-credit thing that we would have is for one, this is as good a spot as any to reveal that Sienna isn't dead.
Yes.
And two, the other person who survived was Cinder. And
I love how we fashioned this scene, by the way.
Oh,
Mickey did too when we had our one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say that Cinder. I'd like to keep what we had mentioned, but I'm going to be adding to it a bit. Cinder ends up crawling out from the bottom of the lake that she dropped in, and right in front of her is the appearance of Pyrrha just sitting on a nearby rock, which she's been dealing with this whole hallucination thing for quite a while, and ends up trying to burn said rock, and Pyrrha along with it, just the whole get the fuck out of my head thing. She ends up stopping at the last minute because she realizes, wait, that's not Pyrrha, that's Neo. And instead of doing that whole thing of Neo, I'm still keeping Neo as a mute, but instead of having her not talking at all, I'm in favor of her doing sign language with subs.
And I fully support that.
Or in some cases, communicating through bits of body language. Because the other person I'd have tag along in this kind of situation is Torchwick.
Yes.
Just with the whole thing of, look how just completely rubbing it in that Cinder got her ass kicked again.
You look like shit.
The high and mighty Cinder brought down to the lowest of lows. And having a bit of a almost Abbott and Costello like back and forth with her with himself and Neo.
I know. I tried to tell her that she needed to change her look, but I mean, this new one just really isn't working for her.
But does she know Kung Fu?
The point is they end up leaving out, and because Cinder knows she can't go back to Salem because she failed not once but twice for the same reasons she screwed up the first time.
Overreaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Her grasp, her reach far exceeding her grasp. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know that they tried to do the whole thing of her being this femme fatale who always is one step ahead.
Not very well.
Instead,
No.
she's a femme failure who always tries to go one step ahead and falls.
She's good at planning. It's just that she doesn't know when to back off.
Is that why they called her Cinderfall?
Huh.
Xanatos, she is not.
No.
For anyone who doesn't know who Xanatos is, go watch Gargoyles again.
She could potentially be Xanatos if her ego didn't get in the way.
And how the mighty do fall.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what they say. Pride goeth before the fall.
And
hold on. No, I know what you're referencing. I know that Tumblr post. Fuck off.
And the approach that I'm kind of going with is that she is in the polar opposite of a position from where she was beforehand with Torchwick. Because beforehand, she was the one ordering Torchwick around and Torchwick being scared shitless of her. Now she doesn't. While she could probably burn both of them to cinders in a heartbeat. Ha.
Unintended there, clearly.
There's still the fact that both of them have at least had a better success rate. I.e., she, when it comes to this particular group, she's on the bottom of the totem pole.
Yep.
So, and that is the gist of our particular setup. So, because of that, going into the whole thing with Atlas, we have the journey to we have the main cast, making the journey together. Oscar joining in as well. Even though Crow is very disturbed at how well Oscar can play the farm boy look.
Especially the childlike innocence in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You've done this before, haven't you? Who knows? And I'm going to quote myself from a note I put in our document.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Ozpin. Ozpin knows. He's not telling.
But part of the reason that they're looking is, one, they're still pursuing the whole mystery when it comes to the Silver Eyes, which I know it'd be tempting to say that there was a kicking the can down the road with this. Not really, because if they had discovered the name list proper, which they did, and if it was up to date, then that would create more problems. The concept we're going with an out of date name list for the Silver Eyes is that this was something that was deemed so rare within Remnant at that point that tracking it was seen as not worth the effort. Whereas Atlas, well, having the most advanced military of any of the major nations, they would track anything and everything, because information is sometimes more valuable than arms.
No, information is always more valuable than arms. These are the three levels of things that are important in war. Topmost, logistics, your supplies. An army does not march on an empty stomach. You lose your supply lines, you've lost the war. Period. Information which is usually tied with supplies. Because if you have more information than the enemy, you can outsmart them, you can provide them with false information, and then using that, make even further advantage over what you already have. Force of arms themselves is the bottom of the totem pole there.
The point is, Atlas wants to maintain all three.
Mm-hmm.
And while in the show they certainly showed Atlas maintaining the most advanced force of arms, it's a case of a bunch of people the writers clearly didn't know how a fully militarized nation would work. And if you don't know that kind of thing, that's why you're supposed to research. Every writer that I know researches a shit ton.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Especially if you're being tasked with writing something you're not all that familiar with. That's why I bring up Harv Bennett so much.
Mm-hmm.
But of course the other reason that they'd head to Atlas is that given the amount of information they have, they probably would know how to utilize a relic. Because we're not doing that whole thing of them trying to find someone to take the relic off their hands. No, this is the relic of knowledge. It has a purpose, otherwise it wouldn't be locked up. We need to figure out what that purpose is.
Yes.
And whether we can use that purpose to our advantage without screwing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I should note that the way we've handled the relics, what I've been calling the Relic of Knowledge is technically in our system the Relic of Order. Because instead of 2 gods, we have 4 gods. Creation, Destruction, Order, and Chaos. The Relic of Order, instead of being this whole you can ask 3 questions every century, it is the Akashic Records. Or for fans of Kamen Rider Double, the planet's bookshelves. You can ask it a question and glean information to said question. But you have to be as specific with your question as possible. Otherwise, information is garbled, or you might get false flags.
Yep. The more generic and broad your question is, the less pertinent information you will have. Conversely, if you focus it down, you will forget the answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to use a database.
It is like trying to do a database.
Well, that's what the Akashic Records is.
I know, and if I had to build the SQL entries for the Akashic Records, I'd probably off myself.
Ugh.
That's
so much information to put database queries through.
Mm-hmm.
Literally infinite information for the Akashic Records.
Yep. But at the same time, so one of the other reasonings for going there is, well, now that the whole thing is settled, Weiss has to go back,
and they need the information about the Silver Eyes from Maria Calavera, who, as far as Crow knows, is still there. And Weiss also said, like you said, the research on the relic and the research on the maidens and the research on everything else, there's nothing but reasons for them to go to Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is us, screaming, hey, there are all of these useful things here. Use them!
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the next three volumes will be the Atlas arc, and this is where things are going to get really interesting for us, because even for the most diehard of fans of RWBY, this is where a lot of people snapped.
I remind everybody of the Colossus.
The Colossus, what they did to Ironwood,
Kaiju,
the Kaiju thing, the Kaiju.
What they did to Crow.
The whole thing with the Ace Ops and the bizarre stuff with the Relic of Creation and how they worded that while talking about souls which they've never even clarified.
Penny.
Oh god.
Whereas we clarified very early on, aura is just an expression of the soul, so stealing someone's aura would be like stealing part of their soul.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why there's a piece of Pyrrha in Cinder.
Yeah. Because stealing the powers and stealing the maiden powers and stealing the aura are one and the same.
Mm-hmm. It's tied to her aura, becomes part of her soul, and thus stealing the maiden powers is stealing the soul, or at least part of it.
Yeah. But that particular arc we will be covering in a few weeks when schedule allows. It'll be quite a while, and there's a few moving parts which we have to figure out if we're even going to keep.
Yes.
Yes,
I vote nuking grandma antagonist now.
That I'm perfectly fine with, but that's not exactly where I was leaning with that. But that's a story for another day. And of course there's plenty of surprises to come along the ways in the coming days, and a few other things that we have planned here in the temple, because I'm always looking for new ways to expand. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.